Hi everybody, welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is number 33, and we're going to do some editing on the invoice screen today. My name is Ryan Bell, and I'll be taking you through the webinar. So a few housekeeping items as usual. Any questions you have regarding today's topic, please put them on the forum. We'll be happy to get back to you within 24 hours. The recording for today will be up on the website, available shortly after the webinar. And tune in next week for week 34, where we're going to take a look at occurrences versus series, and reoccurring work orders, and reoccurring activities, how to create them and manage them. So today's topics we're going to look at is going to start out with adding commission to the invoice screen. We're going to do everything we're doing today is going to be centered around the invoice screen, and everything we're doing is based on our clients calling in asking for these types of customizations. Next, we're going to look at is how to create a shortcut for alt billing information, and we'll get into detail on that when we get to that section. And then we're going to end off with creating a duplicate button. Okay, so when we do commission, there's a few main actions that we're going to use. The ones we're going to get into today are retrieve value from table, the basic math calculation, and enter value into field on screen. So let's jump into method, and we'll take a look. So again, today's webinar is all about examples. We get questions all the time from our clients on how to do everything. So this is a webinar dedicated to showing examples of common requests. So we are going to start off with the adding commission to the invoice screen. So if you're in method, you can go to invoices, and you can see our normal default invoice screen. We have things like balance due, payments applied. All right. What we are missing though, and what we do get asked for, is commission. Sometimes salespeople like to see what they're making on the fly. It really motivates you. So what we're going to do is we need to first think about how we're going to make this commission. Is it going to be a value we set up when we enter in an employee, or are we going to enter in a value for the commission directly into the screen? So for today's example, we're going to set it up where our employees are actually assigned commission rate. So what I'm going to do is we need to start off with the employee screen. We're going to have to add a field for commission. So what we would normally do is we come in here and we're going to look for our employee table. And this is because we want to make sure there's a field created for this. We'll go down to employee, and we can take a look at it. Now all we're looking for is commission. Now I do know that commission rate is here by default, and for the purpose of this webinar I have added another field for commission. Generally, if you want, you would normally come in here and put in your own field. To do so, again, very simple. Select field name, type in what you want to call it, select the type. In this case we're doing integer, and we can hit add field. So once that's the first most important step. Once that's there, we now have a place to look for to say, hey, to figure out this commission, this person makes X amount. So next step would be to add that commission field to the employee screen so that we can actually enter in a value for it. So we'll jump over to our screen list, and we want to find the employee screen. Here's the employee list here. So for the purpose of saving time, I did make copies of this screen already. So I'm going to go ahead and open up employee list 2. On your screen, you will need to make a copy unless you've done a little bit of customization already. And to highlight that, if you click on edit beside a default screen, it will automatically remind you that, hey, you need to copy this screen before you can do anything. So just go ahead and make the copy, and then give it a unique name so you know what this screen is, the difference is. And then we can go in and start working with it. So I'm going to click on edit for my employee list. All right. So we'll give it a second to pull that up. And remember, because we've gone into the employee table now and added in that commission field, it will be available to us in our field list on the left-hand side, and we can drag it on the screen. So what you would do is you scroll through your list of fields here, and you would find commission. So here's commission rate, and if we scroll down on my screen, I had set up earlier where I wanted this to go, and that's under my additional information. And you can see I've dragged it on the screen already. So normally for everyone else, this would be in our list here. We would just pull it on the screen, drop it in, and then resize it to the size we want. So we're going to get rid of this commission rate box, as I do have one called commission here that we're going to use. All right. So now that it's on the screen, we can just hit save and close, and that part is done. So now what you'll be able to do is go out to your employee center. Just wait for this to close up for us. Okay. And on my employee center, we're going to have to refresh the screen because we just published it in the background. So we'll hit refresh, and now under additional information, I have this commission box. All right, so this is very important because it is a value we need to know in order to figure out the commission. So let's jump forward. We need to now get on the invoice. We need to create a field to show us the total commission. So we're going to go to tables again, and now we're looking for our invoice screen, or sorry, invoice table. So here's the invoice table. So we'll open that up. And again, we're looking to add in a field that's going to display our total commission for the sales rep. So scrolling down here, you can call it whatever you'd like. Again, to save time, I did create a field already. And see, we have it here. It's called commission total, and it's a money field. All right, so again, I just went up here. I typed in commission total. I selected money from my type drop menu, and we've added the field. So again, now that it's there, of course, we have to hit over to our invoice screen. Again, I made a copy of it, so we'll pull that up here. We have Invoice Webinar, and we can click Webinar 1, sorry. So we'll click Edit on that, and we'll drag that commission field onto the screen. Remember, we created this field so that when we're done all of our calculations, figuring out how much our sales rep has earned, this is where we're going to put that value so it's displayed to him. Just waiting on the invoice to open up here. Okay. So let's see. Looks like my browser is acting up a little. Click Edit on it again. Here we go. Okay, so now that we're in the design screen, we'll locate on our screen where we want to put our commission. So if we look at the invoice screen, it kind of makes sense. We'll stick with the format here, and we can just tuck commission right under the balance due. So we'll go back to our customize. We're in our screen. I go scroll down. I can see where my balance due. Here's the label, and then here's the field. So I'm going to scroll through here. Here's my commission total field. I'm going to drag that onto screen. And we'll put an object on there, just like the rest of them. We'll use a label and give this box a name. So the reason why we're pulling the label on there is because you can see the way the rest of the screen has been designed. It looks like they've hidden their captions on the actual fields and then used a label to display what they want to call it. So we'll stick with the same name, commission total, and on our field we're going to take our caption away. That way it's not there twice. So we'll hit finish, and then at this point, if we were to save and close, we would be able to see these new fields here. what I want to do instead is go right into adding in some of the actions to calculate our commission. So the next question we have to ask ourselves is, what do we want to happen that's going to trigger the idea of calculating the commission? So I think what we'll stick with is the save button. So anytime we click save, it's going to, we know the invoice is complete and we were trying to put it in our database, so that's a pretty safe time to calculate the commission. So I'm going to open up here my save button. I've gone ahead and gone into step 2, and you can see the current configuration. We're saving the document, then we're retrieving a reference number and the subtotal and the amounts fields. So to start off, what we want to do, let's see here, let's move this, commission. So we want to do a basic math. Okay. Okay, so what we first want to do when we calculate a commission is figure out which, how much commission the sales rep makes. So in order to do this, we have to kind of figure out who the rep is. Now, if you look at the invoice screen, there's a rep field here, so we can use that information to go and get the rep. So in order to do that, we're going to do retrieve value from table. From table, and we'll insert that into our action list. So the first thing we need to know is who the sales rep is. So I'm going to go to the sales rep table, and I want to get the sales rep name. And how I'm going to locate that is by whatever sales rep is assigned to that invoice. So we'll say where initial is equal to the value on our screen, and we'll use sales rep. All right, and then we'll put that in a result. So in an action result, we'll say sales rep name. Name of the sales rep. Now, it is always a good idea to fill in the bottom notes, and this is because if you ever come back to look at your actions, maybe you're doing some troubleshooting, these notes are going to help you figure out what action does what. And when you're looking at a really big list, it's really going to help. All right, so we've got the name of the sales rep. Now we want to do one more retrieve value so we can find out the commission. So this time what we're going to do is we're looking from the employee table, because that's where our commission rate is stored. And we're going to say grab the commission, and this time we're going to say we can locate this because we know the sales rep's name. So if we go to employee, which I believe in this case is going to be customer, and then it's going to be equal to our action result of sales rep name. So ideally what we've said here is figure out, take this sales rep number and figure out which employee it's assigned to. In this case, Amy Hazel. All right, and then we have putting it in the name again. So we can recycle this because we don't need to use this value after this point. And then we can name this get the commission rate. And actually, because it's commission rate that we're getting at this point, let's change the name of it so we're familiar with what this number is. Commission rate. So once that's in there, we can hit save. And then now we can start doing our math. So we know how much the rate is now. We can go ahead and say, okay, so take the subtotal, because in our scenario, our sales reps make their commission before taxes. So what we'll say is get the value from the screen, and there's a subtotal field, and let's say we're going to times it by our commission. Okay, now once that's done, it's going to start to display it. So what I'm going to do at this point is, this is the majority of it. What we're looking to do is figure out who the sales rep is, figure out where to get the rate from. Again, if we go to our employee center now, we can see that there's a commission field, and I filled this in earlier for Amy Hazel. Now she has a commission of 10. All right. So the other functions that we're not looking at right today are just switching over the 10 into a decimal, so we can do multiplying by our subtotal. What I'm going to do though is close this down, and we'll take a look at a completed version of it, and we'll do a quick run through of the actions that we didn't get to look at. So I'm going to save and close this. I'm going to go ahead and open up an invoice where I've finished doing the calculations for commission, and then we'll just look at the difference, and then we'll move on to our next topic. So the big part here is keeping in mind that we need to add in a place to grab that value from, so we know how much our employee is going to make. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the other one we have here. Click Edit on that, and I did this one earlier, and it does have everything finished in it. So if we go to the bottom, you can see I still have my commission label in the field, and I'll open my Save button. We'll go into step 2. All right, and it starts off the exact same as our other button. It's saving our information, retrieving a couple values, and then you can see here we have our rep name. We did that in the other screen. We're getting the commission rate. The one thing I didn't do is I changed it to a decimal, so we know our commission rate. So what we've done here is I've grabbed the action result we made earlier, and I've said take my commission rate, divide it by 100. That's going to give us a decimal. And then we can say in our next math equation, okay, so take the subtotal and times it by our commission rate, and then we've put that answer in an action result, and then one of our last functions here is enter the value into the field on screen. So the two math is, one, convert a commission rate into a decimal. The second one is multiply the subtotal against our decimal, and then that's going to be the commission earned. And then our last action here is to update the commission total with our total commission earned. So there's a very simple, easy way to do the commission. Of course, on the end of it, I always put in a save. Anytime you're adding information to a screen, you always want to make sure you follow up with a save action. That way all the information is secured in there. So then I can give us a run through. Let's take a look. I'm going to save and close. We'll open up this invoice screen, and we'll take a look at that commission field. Save and close. Okay, so now that we've got that saved, we're going to start out. We're going to double check that we have a, because we're doing testing, we want to make sure we assign someone a rate. So we've got Amy Hazel as one of our employees. Under additional info, we filled in that she has a 10% commission rate. So now we can go into our list. We'll open up the invoice that we created that has the commission values on it. Okay, if I scroll down, you can see here there's a commission earned box. So we'll pull up an existing invoice. It's got some items on it. There's no commission assigned right now. This invoice was created before we did this box. There is a rep assigned, but let's make sure it's assigned to Amy so we know there's a commission rate. And then we can come down to the bottom. Actually, let's cancel that update. Come down to the bottom. Now that we have Amy assigned in there, we'll hit Save. Okay, and then you can see the commission is filling in. All right. Okay. And then the other thing is, yeah, we've already double checked. You can see how one of the first things we did was add this commission field. So I just double check that that's there. Also, whenever you update your tab links, always right click on the top section and you'll get this, do you wish to refresh? And you can click OK. That's going to make sure that you've got all the right links there. when you update links, sometimes it won't update right away, but doing that is a good way to know that you've refreshed everything. And if you're still having problems, double check your tab links. Maybe you've got just pointed to the wrong section. All right, so the next part we're going to look at is our alternate build to. All right, one thing I do want to point out, this is based off of our, what people come to us and request. But for this alt build to, this is also useful anywhere else. The main idea here that we're going to highlight is that by changing a drop-down option, we can make something happen on screen. And one of the main actions we're using here is retrieve value from screen, or from table, I'm sorry. So we'll jump into method, and we're going to go to customize. And we'll pull open the same invoice that we started working on earlier, webinar 1. All right, so there isn't as much to this one as the last one. Ideally here, to give us an idea of our scenario, let's say that a customer comes to me and buys some product from me. I'm going to ship to their normal location, but maybe I'm going to bill it to a different customer. That's also in my customer file. So when I pull up an invoice, okay, you can see the bill to information. What I'm looking to do is I'm going to put a drop menu in here so that by default the screen looks for who your customer is and populates this data. But if we use this drop menu on the side, it'll update our bill to information. All right, so we're going to go to customize. We already opened up the invoice screen, so the first thing we need to do is get a drop menu in there. Let's locate our billing information. So here it is. We'll click show, and we'll add in an object for a drop-down. Now, the reason why I'm using an object is because I don't need to save the value that is in this drop-down when we're done. When I've selected this a new customer from my drop-down, it's automatically going to update everything, and there's no need to keep whatever information is in this drop-down. Of course, if you do want to populate it and keep that value, then you would want to add a drop-down to your table and then add it here. Whereas because we don't need that value, we're just going to go with an object. So we'll name this drop-down alt build to. We're going to select who's going to be in this list. What's the list going to show? In our case, we're going to get it to show our customers. So we can say, what table are we pulling the values from? We're going to go to customer. And then in method, in your drop-downs, you have a few options. You can actually display up to 3 columns. So in ours, what we're going to do is our first column is just going to show their full name. All right, at the bottom here, we'll populate with all the names that are from that table. And we can hit, we're going to go previous for this part. So the reason we're going back now is because we want to say, when you click on this button, do something. So we're going to go back to step 2. It's where we're adding in our actions, and the event by default is on text change. So you do have a few other options here, button click and add new, but for what we're doing, it's going to be on text change. So whenever you select this field and change it, these actions are going to run to double check things. So there's 2 ways you can do it. There's a sneaky way, and there's the building it from scratch. So we'll start it with scratch, and I'll show you some tricks. So I'm only going to do a few of them, but what we're really looking to do here is whenever this updates, we're going to retrieve the new values. So the only action we need in here is retrieve value from table. So we'll hit add action. All right, and all the information that we need is here. So we know we're going to get information from the customer table. So we'll set this to customer. In our first action, we know we want to get the new billing address. So billing address 1. And then how are we going to locate it? We'll say where our customer's name is equal to a value from our screen. And when we say our screen, we're really going to point to our drop-down, our alt build to drop-down. So take the name that's in alt build to, go to the customer table, and find the billing address for that person. And then just to finish this up, what do we want to do with that value when we get it? Sometimes when you use this value, this action, you may want to throw it in an action result. For what we're doing today, we can actually go ahead and throw it right on the screen. So we can say bill address 1. And of course, we want to put our note in, update bill address 1. All right, so by putting that in there, it's going to, whenever we change it, it's going to go out and get the billing address. So I'll put in 2 more of these. We'll do the billing address 1 and 2, and then we'll take a look at it and see what it's doing for us. So again, this is the beautiful part. Now that we've got that first one there, not much else is going to change. We still need the customer table, although we do need bill address 2 this time. It's still going to be from our drop-down menu is how we're going to locate who the customer is. And it's just a matter of where we want to dump the answer, and we're going to match it up with our top part, bill address 2. We'll update our note and hit save and close. Okay, so this is the idea of how we're going to make this drop menu work, but there is another more efficient way too, and I want to talk about that as well. Currently, when you select a customer on the invoice screen, this billing information populates automatically. So what we can do is that tells us that the code to go out and get all these values is already in the system. So we can just copy it. So what we could do is I'm going to remove these. Okay, and we'll review this and show you what it does towards the end. But what we're going to do now is just copy everything from this customer box, because we know as soon as I change this, my customer information updates. Okay. Now there you will notice it does do the shipping information as well, but we'll get to that part. So what we want to do is we're in our drop down. We want to copy the actions of another field. So I'm going to click copy actions, and it's going to populate my drop down menu with all the actions that are on the current screen. And right at the top, it starts out with add/edit invoices. So it's alphabetically sorting the sections. And then it goes on to the field and then the trigger. So in this case, on the customer, on text change, those are the actions we want to get. So by selecting that, I want to hit copy actions. And what it's going to do is dump all those actions that were there right into my new drop-down menu. Now, of course, some of these actions we don't need. So now, instead of going through and manually adding everything, it's a lot quicker in method to delete things. So we have shipping address. We can see all the billing information getting copied. So now what we want to do is go down to shipping, and we can start deleting from there. And we'll just remove all this shipping address information. All right, now there are other things that take place. It's up to you if you want them to run or not. If you don't want them to run, you can just hit delete and start removing all these extra actions. But in the end, what we're looking to be left with are these retrieve values grabbing all the billing information. All right, and then also now, if you do want this to change your billing and shipping information, then in this case, we're already done just by copying it over. Now, minor things such as taxable items, copying campaign information. If you want that stuff to refresh, you can leave it in there. In this case, we know which campaign we want it to go on. It's only the billing information we want to change, so we would delete all these extra fields. All right. So just by removing those, you'll get this completed. So what I'm going to do is we're going to fast forward. I'm going to close down this screen, and we're going to jump into a completed. We'll take a look at all the actions that are there, and then we'll go through and actually use the screen. Okay, so we're just waiting for the save and close. We made a couple changes with all those actions, so it will take a moment just to save it and close it down. So again, we'll go back to the invoice I created in preparation for today, and we'll take a look at the button. Okay, so again, you can see I have a drop-down menu here. It's pretty much the same as we were just setting up. It's actually exactly the same. I did not cheat for this one, not cheat, but I wasn't efficient. I did this one action by action. Definitely, as you go through method, you'll learn that copying actions can definitely improve your customization time. So what you can see here is you can see I've done retrieve value for everything in the billing information. To double check what's in the billing information, you can just go over to the screen and you can see we have the 3 billing addresses: province, state, country, and zip code. And again, you can see they're all in my list here. So I'm going to close that up, and then we'll give it a shot. Also keep in mind that you don't need to use this just for your billing. Anywhere else in method where you're looking at to have values change based on a selection, you can do this type of thing where you have a drop menu, and then on text change with what we're doing, go out and retrieve values from the table. Okay, so now we're just going to give that a quick run through, and then we're going to finish up talking about our duplicate button. So my invoice, here it is. I'm going to select an existing invoice as an example. Okay, I guess anyone will do. They all have information. So you can see all Danny's information is populated here, but you know what? We actually want to build it out to Alex Smith. So I'm going to type Alex in my drop menu. It's going to filter as normal. I'll select Alex, and now all my billing information has updated with Alex's. You'll notice none of my shipping information changed. When we looked at the button, you could see that I only had actions in there to replace my billing information. So you can substitute billing information with any other fields in method when you use the drop-down menu in this style. Okay, we're going to move on to our last section here, which is going to be the duplicate. There's a few actions used in here. We're going to start with insert records into table. Show you a few things there. Loop through grid. If you need to learn a lot more about looping, there is a webinar available on it, so head over to our webinar section and check that out. There's assign value to action result. We've kind of used that already, and then a show message. Okay, so really a duplicate, it sounds really sophisticated and whatnot, but it's very simple. All we're doing is copying every value on the screen and inserting that record into the table. So I'm going to open up our invoice that we've been working on together. So the good thing is there's no fields to add to the table for this one. What we do need, though, is a duplicate button. So I don't have that on my screen, so I can just go to my add object and drag a button down. You can place it anywhere. I have a tendency to put it in the middle, in the most ugly spot. So I'm going to click edit on my new button, and we can actually go right ahead and start assigning in all of our actions. So the first thing we want to do, actually let's throw in a caption here. We'll call it dupe. All right, and I can go right to my action list. So what are we looking to do here? We're looking to duplicate it, which is really inserting a copy. So my action we're going to use is insert records into table. All right, every value we need is in front of us. It's straightforward copying it. Now, currently, there's not a very fast way to do a feature like this, so building it manually can be a little drawn out, but it isn't very hard at least. So first thing we want to say is, what table are we going to insert the record to? Well, we're doing an invoice, so let's insert it right into the invoice table. All right. Now, whenever you are inserting a transaction of any kind, either an estimate, a work order, or a purchase order, or an invoice, there's actually two tables we're looking at. You have the top half of the invoice, which has your customer, your terms, the account, and then you have the bottom half, which contains the line items. So we have to insert both all of that information. So what we're going to do is start out with the top. So inserting it into the invoice table, it tells you on the right here what we have to have. So these are the bare minimum requirements in order to do this. So let's start out with AR account. Again, every value we need is on our screen, so it's just a matter of choosing the right fields. So I want to insert into AR account the same value that's in my AR account, and we'll hit add. Okay, same with customer. All right, and then transaction date. So we're going to do just the minimums, and then we will skip forward, and I'll show you what the completed would look like. Transaction date. Okay, so these are the minimum fields, and the other thing we can do here is when we insert this record, sometimes you need to know what the record ID is in case you need to pull it up right away. So by putting in a result here, result inserted invoice record ID. So when we insert this record into the table, we're grabbing the record ID and putting it in this action result. So I'm going to hit save and close there. So those are just the minimum requirements for the top half of our invoice, but we still have to do the line items. We haven't copied those yet. Now they go into their own table, so what we're really looking to do here is loop through our grid. When we look at our invoice, our items are in a grid. So what we want to say is we've inserted the top, now loop through this grid and insert every item on this grid, because every item that's here belongs to this invoice. So the next thing we would do is actually start a loop through the grid. So we do start loop through grid, and we'll add it. Okay, and then we can select which grid. Invoice list, not really what we're looking for, but invoice line items, because this is what we're trying to insert. So this is the grid we want to loop through to figure out which items it is we're after. You do have options here as to only insert rows that are selected, but in this case, we want to insert everything on the invoice. Loop through invoice line item. We have our note there. And then again, it's another it's another insert record. So now that we're looping through that grid, we want to insert each row. So we'll go insert record into table. This time we're doing invoice line items. We've already done the invoice, the top part. This time we're doing the invoice line. And then again, we have a few required. The first required is invoice record ID. This is so it can distinguish what invoice it's a part of. So we can say, remember we made that action result earlier, so we'll say where we want to insert into invoice record ID our action result, and that's remember when we first inserted the top half of the invoice, we said maybe we're going to need to know what invoice this is, let's grab the ID number, and that's what we've done here. So now we're saying, okay, we do need to know it, so the invoice record ID is equal to our action result we made, and we're good. And then the last item we need, or the last field that we have to have by minimum is item. So what you can do here is, well, because we're in a loop, you can do from row. So we're going to say insert the item on the current row into item, and add that. All right, and then hit save. And then you want to close your loop. So end loop through table. So we've only done the bare minimum requirements here. So we've got our inserting the top half, and this is important to remember. You have to do this every time you're on transaction table inserting records. This is how it has to be done. So we've inserted our top half, all the required fields. Now we're looping through our line items and inserting each record row by row, and then we're ending. Now, what I always say is, you'll notice in our PowerPoint I said there's also show message. And the reason I put show message is because you've inserted it into the table, but the user looking at the screen won't see that happen. They won't be able to tell because it happens so quickly that it's actually been done. So I always throw in a pop-up message there just to say, hey, the username, usually that's what I put in. So hey, Ryan, your invoice has been created. Make any changes you'd like to this copy and click save. All right. Otherwise, what you're going to have is two exact duplicates, and then you haven't made any changes. So unless you wanted the exact duplicate, I guess you're all right. But otherwise, you would make all your changes and then hit save to put them in the system. So what I'm going to do is open up the invoice I created earlier so that I can show you guys what the finished product would look like. So we'll hit edit on webinar, and we'll go in. I actually have a duplicate button on here. And we'll just talk about these actions quickly before we end. Okay, so again, it's the exact same pretty much, except you can see I've got my show message in here this time. I've got my insert records into table. On this one, I went beyond just the minimum. I wanted to make sure I copied everything over, so you can see the list is a lot bigger. But what you'll also notice is that it's all value from screen. These values are already on your screen, so this is very easy to set up. Opportunity goes to opportunity, memo goes to memo, and so on. All right. Again, same thing. We have my loop through the line items. Again, in this case, I did put in more than just the minimum, so I've put in, again, they're all value from row because we're going row by row in this loop, so everything is from row. So very easy to set this up. And then in my show message, I've got a duplicate has been created, make any changes with a typo, changes required, and click save. All right, so let's take a look at what that would actually look like as a finished product. And this is a good practice too, using your insert into table. This is good for anyone who's trying to automate creating of purchase orders, or maybe even an activity. If a client orders something, schedule an activity automatically to call him. This is the action you would use to insert those records into their respective tables to get those features done. So I'm going to pull up my invoice screen, and we'll just go through. And we'll take a look at the duplicate button. You'll see how I have my message. So if I pull up, let's find one that has line items. Okay, so this one has line items. Okay, you can see if I come down here and hit duplicate, it's currently inserting all of those records, and then there's my message. All right, so the message is there because had I not shown it, I would just see the same screen, and it would be very hard to tell that this is actually a duplicate. As a little tip, maybe always put in your memo, or put in another field that just says duplicated and maybe from. Just an option there. It's not needed, but highly recommended. All right. So that's the end of today's webinar. Again, the webinar will be posted on the website shortly. Next week is week 34 with me, Ryan Bell. We'll be going over occurrences versus series, recurring work orders, and recurring activities. All right. Other than that, thank you everybody for attending today, and have a great day.